Imagine finding out that the man kissing your forehead each morning is already planning your exit, and the woman helping him is someone close enough to smile in your face. As hidden files, secret messages, and staged lies begin to surface, one pregnant woman realizes she is surrounded not by family, but by predators. Every room in her home looks beautiful, but every silence hides a scheme waiting to destroy her.
Our legacy, Marcus whispered, hand on my stomach in our Boston penthouse at 7:15 in the morning. He, the real estate mogul, appeared utterly captivated. Meanwhile, his star architect was likely admiring the blueprints for a life that was meant to be mine. The kiss he left on my brow was chilling. I was just the docile, expectant mother to them. They were wrong. Their perfect plan had a crack, and I would shatter it. Welcome to my life. Tell me where you're from, and what would you feel finding out about a betrayal like this? Rage, shock, or heartbreak? Comment below. Disclaimer: this is a dramatized tale. The people are fictional, but the theme of intuition is very real. It began. The morning started not with an alarm, but with the quiet whir of a new air purifier at precisely 7:15 a.m. It was a delivery, a courier with a large flat box. I was setting it on the marble island, mid sip of my herbal tea. The Boston Harbor gleamed outside. Inside the box was an architectural model. It was for a new house. Our house, I thought. My fingers shook as I traced the miniature roofline. I set my cup down, a strange unease growing. Barefoot in the cashmere robe he adored, I noticed a tiny latch on the model's base. It was labeled Phase 2. A wave of cold dread washed over me. It wasn't a label, it was a release. The base popped open. Inside weren't decor samples, it was a portfolio. Her portfolio. A striking brunette, maybe 28, with an all knowing smirk. Her name was Isabella, and she was standing next to Marcus in every photo. My Marcus. The realization was a gut punch. I was being erased. The word echoed in my mind. This was some cruel prank. It had to be. I dug deeper. Underneath the photos was a USB drive. My hand trembled as I inserted it into my laptop. Her voice, smooth and arrogant, filled the quiet penthouse. Clara's due in June, she said in the video. The prenup is tight, but the family asset clause only vests a year after the child is born. We just have to time it right. It was a cold, calculated strategy. Is the timeline clear? It was Marcus's attorney. Perfectly. I just act like the supportive protege until then. Isabella answered with a chilling laugh. The sound was poison. My husband's treachery filed neatly beside the model of our supposed future home. I stared at the architectural model on our island, a miniature house built on a foundation of deceit. The betrayal wasn't happening in secret, it was on display in my own kitchen. My feet were rooted to the spot. I noticed the tiny details: the little nursery swing, a room he designed. A small LED on the model flickered, showing the smart home system. They saw me as breakable, hormonal, expectant. The thought was sickening. I slid down the kitchen island, the USB drive falling from my hand. The penthouse felt like a prison. The quiet was absolute, alone in this glass tower. The imported rug offered no comfort. A deep tension seized my shoulders. I saw Marcus's sedan leaving the garage below, the doting husband, off to build his empire. I was his fool. I just had to breathe. A planned demolition of my life. The proof was all here. He claimed a late site inspection last night. A photo showed him with her at a gala. Every detail was documented, leaving no room for doubt. This wasn't a slip up. It was a conspiracy I had just uncovered. More documents were on the drive. Outside, Boston was coming alive. Sailboats in the harbor, people jogging on the esplanade, normal life. But in here, my world was collapsing. I saw his car merge onto Storrow Drive and vanish. My distorted face stared back from the laptop screen. This home contained our life, the illusion of our happiness. He'd given me no reason to doubt. A betrayal this intricate required a blueprint. And there was collateral damage: me and our baby. A liability he planned to liquidate. But what was his method? I watched the sun glint off the Hancock Tower as a single thought pierced my pain. He miscalculated, he assumes I'm just an obstacle to be removed, that I'll crumble and accept his terms. He has no idea who he married. He forgot my old job. Before this life, I was an investigative journalist. I expose corruption. I find hidden truths. I unravel cover ups that are supposed to be flawless. And I will expose every secret he has. The laptop pinged. A new document loaded. The screen reflected a pale woman in a cashmere robe, the perfect image of a coddled trophy wife. I looked exactly like his assumption, clueless. But I wasn't. I reviewed the evidence. The hidden compartment, Isabella's video, the timeline. An undeniable case of conspiracy. But why leave the model here? The truth was a shard of ice in my gut. This wasn't a mistake, it was a message. Someone wanted me to see this. Someone was orchestrating his downfall. But who? And for what reason? A new file opened? A draft of a marital settlement agreement. I read the clauses. The language was brutal, outlining terms that were clinical and cruel. Our marriage was being demolished like one of his old buildings. My stomach clenched. This was real. In a few months, his plan was to have me gone, paid off, and erased. I refused to panic. Fear wouldn't shield my baby. I had to remain focused. I would use my investigative skills to uncover everything. This was a setup, a betrayal so perfectly designed, he assumed I would quietly disappear, believing he was unbeatable. The architect of this reveal was brilliant. Someone with access to his plans, his finances, his entire life. The thought chilled me to the bone. The penthouse was tomb quiet, except for my own pulse. The silence was a roar. This was the beginning. I got to my feet using the marble island for support, alone in my cashmere robe as the city went about its business. A calendar alert appeared on the screen. Finalize C's severance agreement. I gave a slow nod. Words failed me. Moving toward the window, I made a vow. I would expose it all. I will show the world his true face. He and his architect will answer for this. I couldn't know then that my ally would be the last person I'd ever suspect. Those moments staring at the laptop stretched into forever. My heart ached. Each new document twisted the knife deeper. Breathing was impossible. From the penthouse window, I saw normal life continue. Cars on the Zakim Bridge, students by the Charles River. I was once part of that world. The laptop chimed. It was a file titled The Beacon Project, a new development deal. My blood ran cold. The target wasn't just my marriage, it was our entire portfolio. And I saw her name on the board of investors, Marcus's mother. His voice echoed in my head. You don't cross me. I did nothing, I whispered. The file detailed their strategy. Our home, a glass box in the sky, felt like a prison. I walked the quiet hall, smelling only sterilized air. I saw myself in the chrome finish of the wine fridge. The reflection was a stranger. Clara Thorne. My whole life was just data on a spreadsheet for his next big deal. My identity, our home, all just assets to be liquidated. The crime wasn't financial, it was personal, deception, recklessness, a threat to our child. My reflection showed not defeat but resolve. I needed his signature on everything. My credit card was declined. Then the next one. A notification flashed on my phone. Access denied. The digital locks to my life were changing. My identity was being erased. I felt absurdly out of place in my designer maternity dress. My lawyer's office was stark. Miss Thorne, we're ready for you. The conference room was cold, smelling of leather and intimidation. It felt like a concrete box. My lawyer, a woman named Ava, closed the heavy oak door. Marcus has frozen everything, she said. It might take time. The click of the lock was final. I sat in the leather chair, the walls pressing in, no escape, just the hum of the air conditioning. Ava Chen. I recognized the name instantly. We'd crossed paths on a story years ago. She was a tenacious prosecutor back then, known for taking on Boston's elite. Now she was the top divorce attorney in the city, a rising star, they called her, and the one person Marcus Thorne would never see coming. The man in the hospital bed was our security guard. Oh God, a knot of ice formed in my stomach. If the victim was one of our own staff, the department would suspect an inside job. My version of events wouldn't hold up. They'd find a single piece of evidence and twist the narrative around it. The police look after their own. I was already the villain. I had to focus. Last night, 8 p.m., I was at the SF MoMA benefit. I was there for hours networking, looking at the exhibits. The entire event was photographed with a press list. That was my proof. Heavy footsteps echoed. A man in a tired suit, with a detective's shield on his belt, stood and peered into the cell at me. He was in his 50s, with weary eyes that saw everything. Isabel Vance? He asked. Someone's posting your bond? I glanced up bewildered. Your husband's attorney is waiting. His name is Leo Sterling. Bail was set at $1 million. 1 million, Ethan? A chilling confusion set in. I hadn't even made my call. How did he find out? I haven't contacted him, I said flatly. He shrugged a little. He called us. Said he heard there was a problem. He slid the key into the lock. You're being released on your own recognizance. Who told him? I'm not sure. A connection in the department, maybe. He gestured down the hall. Mr. Sterling is in the first interview room. A connection who called my husband before dawn, barely an hour after I was brought in. My husband, who then called the top defense lawyer in San Francisco. I saw him in a small, cold room. A man in a perfectly cut suit, early 40s, with a watch worth more than my car, and the polished calm of someone who charged by the second. Mrs. Vance. His voice was smooth as single malt scotch. Leo Sterling, your husband retained me. I just watched him. How did he know? Sterling's smile was a practiced, reassuring gesture. The Vance name opens a lot of doors in this city. This is a serious event. An employee of a major gallery. It happened at 2 a.m. This isn't public. Your husband is a very connected man. Let's get you home. I have to understand how Isabel. His tone gained a slight edge. You are facing several felony charges. Aggravated robbery, assault on a security officer. The DA will want to make an example of this. My phone, sitting on the table, buzzed. One of the officers must have brought my things. I grabbed it. 22 missed calls. A text from my husband, Ethan. Don't say a word to anyone. I'm taking care of this. From my sister-in-law, Clara. Ethan is an absolute basket case. Please let us know you're okay. I reread the last message. Ethan is an absolute basket case. My sister-in-law. Why would Clara be a basket case? She didn't even know I'd been arrested. No one knew unless... Mr. Sterling studied me, his face impassive. I need the security server from my gallery, I said. I have to see the logs. Your husband wants everyone at the penthouse for a family discussion. I'll be there tonight. But first, I need to know what happened. Sterling's expression hardened. Your husband was very clear. And I am being clear about going to my gallery. I stood up. Thank you for arranging the bond. I'll have my assistant call you. I strode out, leaving him in the room. Outside, the San Francisco fog was cool and damp. I stood on the station steps, a free woman in a cage, and one awful thought took hold. Something is profoundly wrong with my husband's family. My husband found out way too fast. My sister-in-law's text about Ethan being a wreck felt completely wrong. I took out my phone, opening the security portal for my gallery. I had to see the remote access logs. I needed to see who logged in. The portal connected, and my blood ran cold. The system had been remotely accessed at 1:52 a.m. From an IP address, I knew instantly. The Vance Capitol building. Leo Sterling was the exact type of lawyer my husband kept on speed dial. Expensive watch, cold eyes. The station's ventilation system hummed, but I couldn't stop shaking in my cocktail dress. My arms were sore from being held. Sterling, however, looked perfect. He was the personification of old money. He represented the kind of wealth that made ugly problems disappear. Your husband contacted me at 3:15 this morning, he said, setting a thin briefcase on the table. Your bond was $1 million. It's been settled. You're free to go. I looked at the briefcase but didn't reach for it. How did he find out? Sterling's professional calm never cracked. Information travels fast in some circles, particularly when a well known gallery is involved. I was processed at 2:30. This isn't on the news yet. Your husband's influence is considerable. Influence that let him know I was arrested before my own staff knew I was gone. I leaned forward. Before anyone but the arresting officers knew. Sterling's smile thinned. I'm not aware of your husband's methods. What matters now is that he has secured your release. Why? The question hung in the air. Sterling waited a bit. He is your husband. We haven't been speaking for a week. A family is a family, Mrs. Vance. He opened his briefcase. Now let's discuss our plan. You are facing charges of aggravated robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, and burglary. The victim, Walter Cobb, is 68 years old. The district attorney will build a narrative around this. He was a beloved employee. A cold sickness churned in my stomach. 68 years old. I didn't do this. That is our official story. But the evidence they have is very strong. He pushed a document across the table. Your master keycard was the last one used before the system was disabled. Your fingerprints are on the display case that was smashed. We need a strong alibi. Now, what display case? He glanced at his notes. The one housing the Petrov diamond. The new acquisition. My gallery was broken into last month. I filed a report. That complicates things. My head swam. A previous break-in, my own key card. It had to be someone who knew our procedures intimately. Mrs. Vance. Sterling's voice pulled me back. Your alibi for last night? I was at the SF MoMA benefit from 8 until midnight. It was a public event. Then I went home. Can anyone verify you were home after midnight? No. That creates a window of opportunity. Sterling wrote that down. The break-in was at 1:45. If you were at the benefit until 12, you were seen. That is good. We can establish that. I was seen by hundreds of people, I said. We will need the guest list and event photos immediately. And we need an explanation for how your keycard was used. I opened my mouth to answer, then closed it. How? I had no clue. I need my laptop from the gallery, I said again. All of my schedules and communications are on it. Sterling nodded once. Your husband wants you at the penthouse, a family discussion. The phrase, usually so harmless, sounded like a warning. Why does my husband know I need my laptop? I don't get it. Did he tell you to mention that? Sterling's expression was a flawless blank slate. Your husband is extremely worried. He wants to present a united front. I will be there later this evening. I need to go to my gallery first. I have to figure out what's happening. Sterling's jaw tightened. Your husband was very specific. He wants you at the Pacific Heights estate now. The word wants felt like an order. I stood. Thank you for your services. I will be in touch. Mrs. Vance, I strongly recommend you reconsider. I will call you. I left before he could argue. The desk sergeant gave me a plastic bag containing my phone, clutch, and keys. I had to borrow a charger to wait for my phone to power on. The screen exploded with a blizzard of alerts. 22 missed calls, messages from friends, artists, and numbers I didn't recognize. I scrolled through them. Ethan, do not talk. Come to the estate. It was sent at 3:25 a.m., less than an hour after I was brought into custody. Clara, Ethan is losing his mind with worry. Please come home. Sent at 3:41 a.m., I stared at her message. Ethan is losing his mind. My sister-in-law, the queen of the family who resided in her parents' gilded world. Why would she be worried? She couldn't know anything. I hadn't called anyone. Unless someone told her. I continued scrolling. More demanding messages from my husband. A text from my gallery manager asking if everything was okay. How did they all know so quickly? I signed the paperwork in a fog and pushed through the heavy doors into the gray San Francisco morning. The October air was brisk and smelled of the sea. The plaza was bustling with people living their normal, everyday lives. I stood there, released from a cell but trapped in a nightmare. and moved my thumb over a single name in my contacts. I had to phone my husband David to let him know the appointment was fine, that our baby was healthy, it was just a minor concern. But I needed the insurance paperwork from his office first. I unlocked the door to his home study, a room I almost never went into, and started looking. What if he'd had an accident on his trip to Singapore? What if I urgently needed that policy? The desk drawer was locked. My fingers grazed a slim black hard drive I didn't recognize. I plugged it into his computer, and it opened without a password. Inside was a single encrypted file. The password was Serafina, our daughter's name. The file unlocked, revealing not a life insurance policy, but a fully funded business proposal complete with incorporation documents, a new $5 million tech incubator, a project co-founded by David and a woman I'd never heard of. A cold sickness spread through my chest. This was more than a secret, it was a complete betrayal. Our gorgeous Boston home felt alien. The house that had been my sanctuary, with its warm wood and sunlight pouring in the windows that looked out over the Charles River, now seemed like a stranger's house. Just 3 hours before, I was blissfully happy, gently stroking my belly, waiting for my husband to call. The coffee pot was still warm, my favorite mug sat by the sink. His work phone was on the charger, its screen dark and silent. I bolted the home office door and sank against it, my pulse hammering in my ears. Just breathe, Sophia. I had, until Sunday night before Marcus got back from his tech summit. 2 days to understand this, 2 days to learn who this second life was for. I sat at his minimalist desk and tapped his tablet. The screen came to life, unlocked. His browser was full of tabs from the day before. Work chats, a wireframe for a new app, an unpaid invoice. It all seemed so normal, so professional. But it was a lie. I opened our shared cloud drive, hunting for a tax form. Tucked under a folder labeled Investments, I found another one, Sonoma Project. My curiosity piqued. I opened it. Inside wasn't a stock portfolio, but a booking confirmation from a 5-star wellness retreat. For a private bungalow with its own vineyard, the reservation was for 2, booked for next month. My heart seized. The guest's name was Ava, a perfect, soul-crushing piece of evidence. The family travel agent hadn't booked this. They'd only seen the flights for his summit, a very standard business trip. I shut my eyes, picturing the retreat. That wasn't his kind of place. I read the confirmation again. A little note at the bottom, to A for our next chapter. Not for business. A declaration. I stared at the elegant font. When had Marcus last planned a trip for us? I collapsed into his ergonomic chair, my mind racing. He wasn't sentimental. He provided lavishly but intimate gestures weren't his language. The new diamond on my finger felt like a transaction. The last time we attended an event together was a month ago. The firm's acquisition party. I got up, my heart pounding, late July. A rooftop bar overlooking the city. I was exhausted, just 8 weeks along and constantly queasy. A junior partner, Alva. I remembered her now, sharp, ambitious, in a sleek black dress that commanded attention. She'd orbited Marcus all night, captivated by his every word. I hadn't given it a second thought. He was the prize, she was just another networker. Oh God! I snatched my phone and pulled up the photos from that night. There it was, July 21st, 2024, a picture of Marcus and me by the bar. He wore a custom suit, a practiced smile plastered on his face. I was in a flowing dress, trying to conceal the slightest hint of a baby bump. The timestamp read 9:47 p.m. I enlarged the image. Ava was just behind him, watching. A chill went through me. She wasn't just watching, she was staring at him with raw hunger. We had left early that night because I felt unwell. He insisted on getting me a cab home himself. He had the rest of the night, his phone, and a whole other life waiting for him after I was gone. Surely not. She seemed like a career climber, not a homewrecker. She wouldn't try to take my husband. She wouldn't tear apart my family, right? I recalled a text from his mother that morning. Marcus is working so hard for his new family. Working hard at what? I checked my phone. Radio silence from him all day. We hadn't spoken since he flew out, just a short text confirming he'd landed. He seemed preoccupied, distant. I told myself it was work stress. That was their way. Marcus and I weren't overly emotional. We hadn't been for a long time. But booking secret retreats, making promises to another woman, that wasn't just distance, it was demolition. I stared at the blueprint file again, at the creation date. October 21st, 2024, at 2:16 in the morning. He designed this new life in the dead of night, knowing exactly how to keep it from me. He knew I'd never check his cloud storage. He knew I'd be asleep while he was plotting his exit. I stood, stuffing the nursery quote into my coat. I wasn't waiting for him to come home. I was going to his brother's place now to find out what secrets his family was keeping. The drive up Lakeshore Drive felt like moving through a dream. I sped past the glittering downtown skyline toward Lincoln Park. The setting sun painted the lake in hues of orange and pink. It was the kind of perfect Chicago evening that felt full of promise. I just felt numb. By the time I reached his sister's townhouse, my hands were trembling. I punched in the code, their firstborn's due date, and the modern steel gate slid open. Acres 1847 North Orchard sat on a quiet tree-lined street, a four-story limestone masterpiece. The kind of home that broadcasted new money trying to look old, even though Marcus had financed the whole thing. Lights blazed from every window. I parked my Tesla behind my brother-in-law's Maserati and stared at the imposing front door. Focus, Sophia. I breathed deep and got out. The door opened before I could ring the bell. David stood there, Marcus's partner, a look of calculated surprise on his face. 43, athletic, in a designer polo. Even at 6 p.m., he looked ready to close a deal. Right on schedule, he said. We should chat. I brushed past him without a word. The foyer was stark, like an art gallery. Polished concrete floors, a floating staircase, a single enormous abstract canvas on the wall. The air smelled of expensive candles and ambition. Olivia emerged from the living room, a wineglass in hand. She seemed even more slender than I remembered. Her dark hair was slicked back, her silk loungewear flawless. She drifted across the floor, her smile failing to warm her eyes. Sophia, darling, what's all this? Are you okay? I stepped back before she could touch my arm. Where is he? David's friendly facade dropped. His PA called me. Now, come have a seat. We need a strategy, he said, already turning away. Olivia paused, then followed him. I stood my ground, taking it all in. The house felt sterile. It always had. No matter how many tense family dinners I'd sat through here, it never felt like a home. It was David's ambition, Olivia's social climb, Marcus's money. I walked into the living room. David was at the wet bar, pouring a large scotch. Olivia had arranged herself on a severe white sofa, her hands clasped tightly. They both watched me as if I were an unexpected variable in an equation. I sat across from them, my back straight. Olivia said, This acquisition has been so stressful. David added, There's an SEC issue, an ethics complaint. We're handling it. An ethics complaint, I asked. What kind of complaint? Olivia's knuckles were white. Someone filed an anonymous tip. They claimed Marcus had an improper relationship with someone on the acquisition team. Who was the tipster? David's voice was curt. Anonymous? That's what the word means, he clipped. He was an awful liar. I saw it in the muscle jumping in his jaw, in the way Olivia suddenly found her wineglass fascinating. They knew who she was. Before I could respond, I heard a car in the driveway. Sophia! Ava stood in the doorway, eyes wide, face ashen. She was dressed in expensive sweats, her hair pulled into a messy bun. Her face was swollen and tear-stained. She moved to hug me. I held my ground. Ava stopped, her pained expression faltering. Ava, thank God. Are you all right? Her voice was a fragile rasp. I can't believe any of this is happening. Ava was the lead VC for the buyers, David explained quickly. This is a catastrophe. I remained still. Our lawyer is handling the press. Ava blinked. Well, Chicago's a small world in our business, you know that. I watched her. The tears seemed real, her eyes were red, but the whole thing felt rehearsed. Her hands shook, but her eyes were alert, calculating. This wasn't grief, it was damage control. Ava, I began, my voice flat. Where were you last night at 10:21 p.m.? The room went silent. David set his glass down hard. What in God's name does that have to do with anything? I kept my gaze locked on Ava. It's a direct question. Where were you? Ava's mouth opened, but no words came out. I was right here. With David and Olivia, we were having dinner. I glanced at my sister-in-law, Olivia. Is that right? Yes, she said, a fraction too fast. Of course, we were all here together. What was for dinner? Olivia stumbled. I had the chef send over. Pasta. Yes, pasta. What time? 7, David interrupted. We ate at 7. Ava was here the whole night. What are you implying, Sophia? I rose to my feet. Ava flinched. I'm not implying, I said. I'm asking why someone used my guest key code to access our building last night. Why someone pinged my phone's location to this address, and why an anonymous tip was called into the SEC to make sure Marcus would be investigated. That's preposterous, David began. Is it? I focused on Ava. Truly? I looked at her left hand. A delicate silk scarf was tied around her wrist. What happened to your wrist? I asked. Ava looked down, then hid her hand behind her back. Nothing. I burned it on the stove. When? Yesterday, before or after 10:21? Sophia, that's enough. David stood, his voice dangerously low. You are upset, you are pregnant, and you are frightened, but you will not stand in my home and harass our guest. I need to use the powder room, I stated. No one moved. The one upstairs, I specified. David's jaw was tight, but he gave a sharp, dismissive nod. I left the room, went up the floating staircase, and turned left at the landing. But I walked right past the guest bathroom. I went directly to the guest suite, and the scene I found there was about to tear their entire story apart. Ava's usual room was a perfect showroom of neutral tones and quiet wealth she hadn't earned herself. I closed the door behind me and listened. I could hear David's furious, muffled voice from downstairs, Olivia's attempts to calm him, the sharp clink of a decanter against the glass. Good. They thought I was falling apart. I scanned the room, a perfectly made bed with a dozen throw pillows, a vanity cluttered with pricey skincare and half-empty water bottles. The door to his home office was slightly open, showing the glow of the dual monitors on his large oak desk. On the credenza, a new architectural model, a project he told me was confidential, was displayed under a spotlight. His work tablet was on its charging stand, the screen dark but for a tiny pulsing light. I walked over and touched the screen. It came to life. It unlocked with my Face ID. The background was a photo of us in Italy last summer, looking like the perfect couple. I browsed the project folders on the main screen. The usual files were there: the Napa estate, the Presidio Heights Tower, and 6 active project bids. I looked closer. The first few were exactly what I'd expect. A bid for a winery, a design board named Dream Coastal Home, a cost analysis for a new hotel, all part of his empire. As I was about to turn it off, I noticed a locked folder. The label was simple: private. My fingers paused over the screen. I tapped it. A passcode was required. I tried our anniversary, access denied. I tried the date of our first big deal together, 5/3. It opened. The folder contained financial records. May 3rd, 2024, 10:31 p.m. $50,000 to SG Designs. May 5th, 2024, 3:16 a.m. $100,000 to Sausalito Leasing Agent. May 10th, 2024, 2:05 a.m. $10,000 wire to a jeweler. Was SG a new designer? June 2nd, 2024, 11:30 p.m. What are the asset division laws in California? I froze, my heart starting to pound in my chest. Marcus had been moving money. and he was researching divorce law. And on the night he said he was working late, he was planning his exit. My hands trembled as I took out my phone, taking several pictures of the tablet screen, documenting the transfers and the search history. I closed the folder, put the tablet to sleep, and backed away, my thoughts racing. I needed something more. A search history could be a fleeting thought. A lawyer might say it was simple financial planning. I needed something that connected the dots. I went back to the tablet and opened the photo gallery. Wedding pictures, vacation shots, family gatherings. In the albums, under a folder named Utilities, I found it. Hidden inside was another album requiring a second password. I took a breath. I typed in my sister's birthday. It opened. The album wasn't just pictures, it was screenshots of text messages. The first was dated April 14th, 2024. Message 1, Marcus to Sophia. I saw your latest painting. You're too talented to be in a group show. She'd been so excited to finally get her art some recognition. He was supposed to be supporting her like a brother. I skipped ahead. Message 20, Sophia to Marcus. I can't believe this is my new studio. It's perfect. A picture was attached of her in a sun-drenched loft in Sausalito. The loft he'd paid the lease on. Message 35. Marcus, I've started the process with the lawyer. The Nightingale Trust will protect you. Sophia, and the baby? What about Elena? Marcus, she won't suspect a thing. Message 80, just last week. Everything is set. The trust is funded. The gallery space is secured. Elena's perfect happy life is about to end, and for once, I'll be the one he chooses. I struggled to breathe. The words blurred. Marcus wasn't just having an affair. He was building a new life with my sister. He bought her a studio, he set up a trust. He had meticulously planned my replacement as if it were a new development deal, as if I were just a property to be disposed of. I heard his car in the driveway. I put the tablet back on its stand, locked it, and turned as the office door opened. Marcus stood there, loosening his tie. Elena, why are you in here? I arranged my face into a mask of a tired, pregnant wife. Sorry, I just felt a bit overwhelmed. This baby. Marcus's eyes scanned the office. The desk, the model, the charging stand. Why didn't you go lie down? It was just closer, I said. I felt dizzy. His gaze rested on the tablet for a second too long. Then he looked at me. You should go to bed, he said, his voice softening. You need your rest. It's a big day tomorrow. I nodded. You're right. I started toward the door, but he put his hand on my arm. You know I love you, right? His voice was smooth as silk. Everything I do is for you and this family. You have to know that. I looked down at his hand on my arm, the hand that had typed those messages to my sister. I looked up and met his earnest gaze. Of course I know that, I said. You're my husband. His face relaxed into a relieved smile as he let me go. I walked out, down the hall, and past the nursery we had just finished painting. I didn't look inside. I went to our bedroom, closed the door, and leaned against it, my world collapsing. I sank to the floor, my hands shaking too hard to even hold myself up. 3 truths were now brutally clear. 1, Marcus had systematically moved our shared assets into a secret trust. 2, the sole beneficiary of that trust was my sister Sophia. And 3, they were both lying to protect their new life. But I still hadn't processed the cruelest part. I had no idea how he planned to get rid of me. I was awake the entire night. By 5 a.m., I was in my own study, my 3 monitors lighting the dark room, deconstructing every piece of his digital life. The photos from the tablet were on the left screen. Wire transfers, dates, amounts. In the center, our shared business server access was open, awaiting my input. On the right, a spreadsheet was forming, a timeline of my husband's and my sister's grand betrayal. April 4th, the affair begins. May 3rd, the secret financial pipeline opens. June 2nd, he researches how to leave me. October 5th, 9:14 p.m. The trust is finalized. October 6th, 6:47 a.m. I discover it, but the story felt hollow, missing a key component. I needed more than texts and bank statements. I needed irrefutable proof for a divorce court, the kind that his high powered lawyers couldn't dismiss. I leaned back, my tea cold, staring at the ceiling. Then it came to me. 4 years ago, I set up the encrypted server for our joint venture. I wanted a secure place for blueprints, contracts, and communications. I spent a weekend configuring it, linking my account, and one for Marcus. And since I built the system, I still had the root administrator key, giving me access to everything, including his sync devices. I sat bolt upright, pulled up a new terminal window, and logged in with the admin credentials. The control panel displayed two profiles: Elena Moretti, Marcus Vance. I clicked on Marcus. A list of his connected devices appeared: a laptop, an iPhone 16, the tablet, all active, all syncing to the server. A cold smile touched my lips. Let's see what else you've been hiding, Marcus. I found his phone's continuous data backup from the day before, October 5th, the day the trust was finalized. The download started 8 gigabytes. This would take a few minutes. I made more tea and sat back down, watching the green bar crawl across the screen. 80%. 90. Done. I opened the archive with a forensic tool I used to recover data from failed hard drives. The program filled with everything: emails, browsing history, app data, call logs, precise location data. I went straight for the emails. The software flagged a recently deleted conversation. I opened it, a chain between Marcus and an unknown contact. The address was a Proton Mail account. I scrolled to the beginning, August 15th, 2024, 2 months ago. I have the documents you asked for, $2,000. Bitcoin only. Marcus had replied, "Are you certain they're untraceable?" The contact wrote back, "They are sourced from a clean shell corporation. No link to you whatsoever." My eyes were glued to the screen. Forged incorporation papers. He was building a fake company. I read on. August 28th, 2024. Marcus, the board members are confirmed. Anonymous contact. Names are placeholders, they don't exist. One audit and it all falls apart. My fingers clenched the mouse. An audit. He was creating a shell company to move assets through. A company designed to collapse under scrutiny, making the money vanish. He wasn't just leaving me, he was planning to leave me with nothing. I took a screenshot, saving it to my evidence folder. Next, I checked the financial data. Marcus's business account was linked to the server, giving me a full transaction history. I scrolled back to mid-August, August 15th. A crypto payment for $2,000 to an anonymous wallet. The transaction note read, "Consulting fee." I ran the wallet address. It was dead, a one-time use account. But a quick check on a private financial investigators forum I used for due diligence revealed the wallet type was a favorite of a known fraud specialist. This wasn't some clumsy mistake. It was a sophisticated financial scheme, and Marcus had paid a professional to set it up, hiding the payment as a business expense to defraud me. I went deeper, pulling up the audio files from his car's synced infotainment system. It had synced to Julian's cloud account, a relic from a past upgrade. I found the purchase history. On August 15th, 2024, she'd bought a $750 prepaid debit card and immediately used it for a single online service. The payment was anonymous, but the date was a thunderclap. It was the same day she paid the reputation management firm. Isabel knew exactly what she was doing. I exported the payment records to my evidence drive. Next, I opened her linked spending accounts. It was a sea of the expected. Gold Coast boutiques, spa treatments, charity gala tickets, private Pilates, but one charge stood out. September 10th, 2024, $300 to Chicago Strategic Solutions. I searched the name. A high-end opposition research firm in the loop. Expensive, discreet, specializing in narrative control and digital asset placement. My pulse roared in my ears. She had hired corporate spies. For what? to dig up dirt on me, to build a fake profile of me, to map my entire online life so she would know precisely how to discredit me with a perfect alibi? I opened the firm's website. Their services included subject analysis, pattern of life mapping, and digital footprint fabrication. It was the perfect arsenal for someone who wanted to dismantle a career and make it look like self sabotage. I sank back in my chair, my breath catching. This wasn't a jealous outburst, this wasn't a desperate lie. Isabel had meticulously planned this for months. She'd built a fake professional identity for me. She'd researched the perfect way to frame me for corporate espionage. She'd hired professionals to stalk me online. She'd used untraceable payments to cover her tracks. She had practiced the data drop. She had selected the corporate target. And she documented the entire thing in a hidden file like a goddamn business plan. My phone buzzed. A text from Julian. "We have to talk. Call me." I dismissed the notification. I couldn't face him. Not yet. Not until I knew everything. I went back to the old tablet's file system, which was still open. I scanned the last few documents, receipts, photos, calendars, and then I saw it. A folder on Isabel's user profile labeled Project Mockingbird. Last modified, October 5th, 2024 at 11:32 p.m., the night the false story about me broke. My hand trembled as I moved the cursor. Whatever was in this folder would confirm my deepest fear, that Isabel hadn't just framed me. She had documented it, every calculation, every step, every choice she made to annihilate my life. I clicked on the folder and started reading. But wait, before I share the contents of that project file, the one where Isabel detailed her 90-day plan to ruin me, you have to wonder. Was she working alone? Did Julian suspect anything? Or is this story about to get much, much darker? Because what I discovered wasn't just a plan, it was a corporate style takedown. Phase 1, vulnerability assessment. Phase 2, narrative development. Phase 3, execution. She had outlined it with cold, methodical precision. A quick note: this story contains fictionalized elements for dramatic effect, and any resemblance to actual people or events is purely coincidental. If you find stories of intimate betrayal difficult, this might be a good time to step away. But if you are ready to see the moment I learned Julian's pregnant wife had spent 3 months orchestrating my professional demise, then stay with me. The project file doesn't lie, and its contents will shatter everything you believe about love and jealousy. I poured another glass of wine. I was absolutely going to need it. The file had 90 days of entries. I leaned back in my chair, the document glowing on my monitor, and I began to scroll. The first entry was July 18th, 2024, 3 months ago, a full season before the scandal hit. I took a sharp breath and read, Day 1, dinner tonight. Julian couldn't stop praising Chloe's expose on the city council's zoning fraud. A lead journalist at 33. I am so sick of hearing her name. I run a top 5 charitable foundation in the city, and Julian talks about it like it's a social club. I am done being his supporting actress. I stared at the screen. This was all born from envy. My career, my independence, my success. That's all it took for her to decide to burn my world down. I remembered that dinner in July. Julian had insisted I come celebrate my story breaking. Isabel was all charm, hugging me and saying how impressed she was, all while she was boiling with rage. I read on, Day 15. I have a plan. Chloe thinks she's so clever, building her perfect career. She won't see this coming. First, I need to get access to her work credentials. Then, I need the perfect corporate target. A company whose data, if leaked, would create a media firestorm so intense that no one would bother looking too closely at the source. My hands started to shake. The perfect target. She had chosen Oratech on purpose. This wasn't a random act, it was a strategy. She had spent 2 weeks plotting my ruin, and she knew the key was a target that would make the board and the press too hysterical to think straight. I scrolled down. Day 28. Chloe has a standing coffee meeting at that cafe in Lincoln Park every Wednesday. She's so predictable. I'll accidentally run into her tomorrow. I'll get her credentials while she's distracted. I closed my eyes. August 12th. She was there. She sent me a text. In your neighborhood for a meeting. Coffee after you file your story? I had been so surprised, thinking it was an olive branch. We met, we chatted, and I left my work laptop on the table when I went to the counter to get a refill. When I returned, Isabel was gone, texting that her meeting had been moved up, and she had already used a USB keylogger. I kept scrolling, my stomach twisting into a knot. Day 35. I have it. Chloe's login is mine. She has no idea. So trusting. So stupid. Now I just need to finalize the target. So stupid. That's how she saw me. The woman Julian was in love with. The woman she saw as a rival despite my having ended things with him months ago. I was stupid for ever trusting her. I forced myself to read on. Day 40 monitored Chloe's social media today. She looked so happy in her pictures from the press club dinner. That feeling won't last. I froze. August 20th. The Mercer Hotel. I had felt a strange chill that night, but dismissed it as exhaustion. But it hadn't been nothing. It had been Isabel stalking me online, already imagining my life in pieces. Day 47. I found it. Oratech, their chief competitor. Its CEO is a notorious tyrant, a perfect, unsympathetic target. She accesses their servers from her work terminal every Tuesday and Thursday for background research. And here is the genius of it. When a rival's trade secrets get leaked, they'll assume corporate espionage. They will find the digital trail leading back to her IP address, and her career will be over before she can even mount a defense. Chloe won't stand a chance. I felt bile rise in my throat. She had picked Julian's main competitor, cold and strategically, because she knew it would guarantee a swift and brutal professional execution, knowing the industry would be too scandalized to question the evidence. She had turned my own journalistic tools into her weapon. The entries were chillingly precise. Log 52 retained Chicago Strategic Solutions for $200 an hour to monitor Chloe Rossi's digital footprint. A sound investment. The firm had been hired to build my fake profile. This was a planned assassination, not an act of passion. Log 60, the foundation gala. Chloe isn't coming with Julian. Perfect. Her distance from him will make the betrayal seem more plausible. I remembered that night. I told him it was a conflict of interest. I thought I was maintaining integrity, not helping her build my gallows. Log 68. Acquired a spoofed email address from a dark web vendor. 500 in untraceable gift cards. It looks identical to her professional account. If there's any blowback, I use it. Chloe's real account remains the source of the primary leak. She had a plan for every contingency. This was a cold, calculated hit. Log 75, digital dry run complete. Sent an encrypted data packet through the network at 10:15, disguised as a press query. No security flags, no alerts, the path is clean. Chloe's access is a ghost key. My world spun, a practice run. She had performed a digital rehearsal, checking the path, timing the data transfer, ensuring she wouldn't be caught. It was premeditated, not a panicked move. A rehearsal? On September 2nd, I was at my desk. Miles away, Isabel practiced my character assassination. I scrolled on. Log 82. I solidified my motive. Julian needs to see her for what she is. His words to me? Chloe was always so ambitious. She thinks she can have it all. This will prove she's just another ruthless climber. Julian's own words, twisted and used against me. Isabel would make him believe this narrative. A burner phone will make the anonymous tip to the press. Flawless. My former lover. Something inside me fractured. He would believe her. Isabel had listened to his insecurities and weaponized them. My ambition was my refusal to quit my job for him, my need for independence, my rejection of his world. For that, she wanted me professionally executed to prove I was nothing without him. I blinked away tears, reading the final entries. Log 89, September 16th. All assets are in place. I will transfer the Oratech files at 10:17. Chloe will be in an editorial meeting, a useless alibi against a server log. The anonymous tip goes out. By dawn, Chloe Rossi will be a pariah. Her career, her name, her credibility gone. She will understand what it means to lose everything. Then Julian will finally see that I'm the one who protects him. Goodbye, darling. The breath left my body. It was total destruction she wanted. Not just a breakup, but the complete demolition of my life, my work, my very identity, written down like a quarterly report. It was an obituary for my career. I was numb. For 3 months. For 3 months, she had engineered my downfall. A new entry was at the bottom, dated today, a few hours ago. Log 90. The news is out. Chloe's been fired. Julian is probably at her apartment right now, confused and trying to fix things. Let her try to discredit me. An accusation is just noise without proof. The plea deal will start looking like her only way out. My in-laws have our lawyers managing everything. It's all under control. The phone lit up at 6:47 in the morning. That was the moment I found the burner phone. Nina had no idea I had her secret correspondence. She didn't realize I'd found the phone she'd carelessly left in the guest room, or that I now had screenshots of her search history, her crypto payments, and her chats with the art forger. She thought she was untouchable, that her victory was assured, her own hubris would be her downfall. I powered down the device, alone in the silent penthouse. My coffee was stone cold. Morning light flooded the apartment, but I felt a chilling darkness. The evidence was all there. A meticulous record of a 3-month plot to frame me for grand larceny and art forgery, digital receipts, location data, a full confession in her notes. And still, I was frozen. I couldn't just walk into a police station with this. Nina would claim I fabricated it. Julian would deploy his family's legal team to bury me. Their assistant would lie under oath for them. Finding her burner phone was a legal minefield. Their lawyers would argue the evidence was inadmissible. I needed a solid plan, not just raw data. I poured the cold coffee down the drain and stared out at the San Francisco skyline. Nina was somewhere in that city, living her life, plotting her future with my husband, and faking sympathy for my situation. She was completely unaware, I knew, ignorant that I'd just spent hours piecing her treachery together. She always saw me as the fragile, naive wife, easily manipulated. She was mistaken. I needed an ally, someone beyond my husband's sphere of influence. I picked up my phone, my fingers hovering over the contact for the San Francisco Police Department. My thumb froze above the screen. This would change everything. It was a declaration of war against my own sister. Nina would know I had uncovered her plan. Then I thought of Marcus Thorne, his life's collection violated, and of my unborn child. 3 months of my sister's cold, methodical betrayal. I pressed the call button. It rang twice. San Francisco Police. Which department are you trying to reach? I need the detective assigned to my case, I said, my voice steady. My name is Isabel Vance. I was charged 2 days ago. The case number is 83091. There was a brief pause. That would be Detective Russo. Art Theft Division. 1 moment. Hold music began to play. My heart pounded against my ribs. A tired, sharp voice came on the line. Russo. Detective, this is Isabel Vance. I'm the main suspect in the Thorne Gallery theft. I'm aware of who you are, Mrs. Vance. This is highly irregular. Your attorney should be handling communications. I have evidence I was framed, I cut in, by my sister. I just need 1 hour of your time. A beat of silence. Your lawyer suggested you might make a desperate claim. I have her burner phone, I stated. A 3-month digital diary. It explains why she targeted Marcus Thorne's gallery specifically. The quiet on the other end was absolute. His next words were terse. Headquarters, 2 p.m. Come by yourself. I arrived at 1:55, carrying the burner phone and a flash drive with encrypted copies of everything. Russo met me at the entrance, a lean man in his 40s with observant eyes that seemed to take in every detail. He wore a simple gray suit, his badge clipped to his belt. He didn't offer a handshake. This way. We walked through a maze of hallways to a bare windowless room. You've got 30 minutes, he said, gesturing to a chair. Begin. I woke the burner phone and opened the Notes app. These are my sister Nina's private notes. I found them on a burner phone she left at my home. I tilted the screen toward him. This entry is from July 30th, 2024. Russo leaned forward. The text read, pinpointed the target. The Monet from Marcus Thorne's private collection. Isabel authenticated it. The perfect setup. He inspects it himself, only twice a year. The genius of it is, when a man like Thorne gets hit, the department throws everything at it. They'll arrest her based on the planted evidence and won't look deeper. Isabel will be finished. His face became a stony mask. Show me more. I swiped to a note from September 16th. The night before the switch, all pieces are ready. I'll swap the paintings at 9:17. Isabel has her prenatal class, an alibi so flimsy it will crumble. I leave a thread from her coat near the display case. Our informant will place the anonymous tip. By morning, Isabel will be in custody. Russo read it a second time, then sat back. This is clear premeditation. Now prove it wasn't you who wrote it. I was prepared for that. Check the phone's location data. Every note is time-stamped. Match it with Nina's known movements. She last accessed these notes the night of the theft. The phone's GPS confirms her location was 2 blocks from the gallery. I switched screens. There's more. A Bitcoin transfer to a forger in Amsterdam. The encrypted messages arranging the commission. I showed him the phone again. His jaw was set as he absorbed the crypto ledgers and chat logs. Finally, his eyes met mine. I also have a rock-solid alibi. They arrested me without confirming it. I was at my obstetrician's office for a live ultrasound from 9 to 10 p.m. the night of the theft. The entire appointment is on video, recorded on the clinic's secure server. You can get a warrant. Russo's gaze narrowed. Why didn't your lawyer present this? My husband's family attorney isn't trying to exonerate me, I explained. He's trying to contain the scandal for my husband. Russo stood and walked to the wall. He was silent for a long moment before turning to me. If this is true, we're looking at more than theft. This is conspiracy to commit a felony, insurance fraud, and perjury. Is your husband a part of this? He was with my sister, Nina. I told him they were at his apartment in Sausalito, 20 miles from my appointment. How can you be sure? Check the burner phone I gave you. You'll find her texts. Russo observed me for a moment, then grabbed his phone. Miller, get to interview room B now. 2 minutes later, an officer entered the room. He was younger than Russo, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes and a tablet in his hand. He glanced at me, his expression professionally blank. Officer Miller, I began quietly. I'm so sorry for the trouble this has caused Mr. Thorne, but I didn't do this, and I can prove it. Russo gestured to the burner phone. Take a look at this. Miller reviewed the screen. I watched his face shift from professional interest to shock, then to a quiet fury. He scrolled through the files again. He looked up at Russo. Is this real? The device is clean, Russo confirmed. Server pings corroborate the data. We also have untraced financial transactions and a verifiable alibi we failed to check. Miller faced me, his voice strained. Your sister did this. She chose that painting on purpose. Yes, I answered, because she knew my authentication work would make me the primary suspect. She knew the focus would be on me, not the facts. Miller's hand tightened into a fist. He looked back at Russo. I should be recused, but you need to bring her in immediately. Russo nodded. Agreed, but we do this by the book. He turned to me. Mrs. Vance, if we pursue this, your entire family will be under investigation. Your sister will face major felony charges. Your husband could be implicated in the conspiracy. Are you prepared for that? I remembered Nina's smug texts. He's almost all mine. I thought of my unborn baby and the web of lies strangling my life. I met Rousseau's stare. I am, but I have one condition. Rousseau waited. I want to be the one to question Nina officially. That night, Rousseau placed the call. I was in his office listening as he activated the speakerphone and dialed my sister's number. My hands were steady, but my heart was a drum against my ribs. This is the setup Rousseau had explained 20 minutes earlier. We are bringing her in as a cooperative witness. She won't expect to need a lawyer. You'll be in the room, the victim who needs her help. She'll think she's there to seal your fate. And we will be recording, I had asked. Audio and video. Two-way glass. The works. If she incriminates herself, she's done. Rousseau had leaned forward. But Isabel, you cannot coerce anything. No threats, no offers. Just present the evidence piece by piece and let her weave her own trap. Can you do it? I had met his gaze without flinching. I have spent my whole life covering for Nina. Tomorrow that ends. Now, as her phone began to ring, Rousseau's voice became calm and authoritative. Miss Vance, Detective Rousseau, SFPD, I'm calling regarding the investigation into the Thorn art theft. Nina's voice was cautious when she answered. Yes, what is it? We understand you're Isabel Vance's sister. We'd like you to come in tomorrow morning to provide a statement that could help clarify the timeline of events. A short pause. Then Nina's tone became warm with false concern. Of course, I'll do anything I can. Isabel could never have done something like this. 9 a.m. tomorrow at the Hall of Justice. You won't need counsel. This is just a routine witness interview. I will be there, Nina said. The line went dead. Rousseau looked at me. She sounded eager. She thinks she's coming to put the final nail in my coffin, I replied. Excellent, let her believe that until the very last second. Rousseau used the next hour to drill me on interview strategies. We sat at the small table, him with a notepad, me with the burner phone's contents displayed on a laptop. Go in soft, he instructed. Create a false sense of control, then introduce one piece of evidence at a time. Don't reveal everything at once. Encourage her to lie. And if she stonewalls, she will. Let her. Every denial is another bar on her cell door. He tapped his pen. Know her tells. When Nina twists that ring on her finger, she's avoiding a question. When she tucks her hair behind her ear, she's fabricating. When she folds her arms, she's building a wall. What if she gets up to leave? She isn't under arrest. She's free to go, but a narcissist can't stand losing. She will stay to try and win. I committed every word to memory. Rousseau stood. Go home and get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be a marathon. I didn't drive home. I went to a quiet cafe in Sausalito, holding a cup of tea I didn't drink, just watching the lights shimmer across the bay. All I could think about were the ordinary people out there, living lives not poisoned by betrayal. I remembered Sophia at 17, crashing my first startup server and begging me to take the fall. I did it, of course. Izzy, you'll always cover for me, right? She'd pleaded. Always, I promised. I thought of Sophia in her 20s, funding a lavish trip to Dubai on my corporate card. I settled the $30,000 balance myself, and she never offered a thank you. I thought of the day I saw the decrypted chats between her and my husband Richard. She never apologized for that either. Big sisters are supposed to absorb the hurt. They forgive. They move on. And Sophia had repaid me by scheming for months to demolish my life and steal my husband. When I finally got back to my San Francisco penthouse, it was nearly 1 in the morning. I didn't bother trying to sleep. I just reread the chat logs one last time. He'll be with me soon. She'll be out of the picture by Friday. Just a little digital sabotage. I practiced my first question in the mirror, my voice flat and cold. Sophia, where is your other laptop? I repeated it until 3 in the morning. At 5 a.m., I was just watching the dark sky, waiting for dawn. At 6 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. The police called me. They want a statement about your security breach. I'm so worried. What should I say? I stared at the message. She was asking me how to best frame me. I typed back. Just tell them what really happened, Sophia. It's all anyone can do. I hit send. The typing indicator appeared and disappeared. Finally, her reply came through. Okay, you're my hero. I set the phone down, feeling a leaden weight in my chest. In 3 hours, Sophia would walk into that precinct believing she was the star of her own drama. She didn't realize she was a character in mine. I arrived at the station at 8:30. Detective Miller met me outside an interrogation room. It was smaller than the last one, with a heavy table bolted down. A camera was in the corner. A large two-way mirror dominated one wall. Grant is on the other side, Miller said. He wants to witness this. I just nodded. We're recording everything. When she gets here, an officer will show her in. You'll be waiting. I'll say you're here to clear the air and ask to talk to her. Then I leave. If she questions it, say you wanted to thank her for her help. Stay calm. I glanced at the mirror. I couldn't see him, but I felt Grant's focus, waiting for a resolution for the man whose company his wife nearly destroyed. What if she refuses to say anything? I asked. Miller's expression was a blank slate. Then we build our case with warrants and digital forensics. But if she confesses, he trailed off. We have her, I finished. At 8:55, Miller's radio crackled. The witness is here. He gave me one last look. Ready? I thought of the months of digital betrayal. I thought of the CFO who almost lost his job. I thought about Sophia's text. You're my hero. I sat in the chair facing the door. I'm ready. The room was chilly. I laced my fingers on the cool metal tabletop and waited. At 9 o'clock sharp, the door opened. An officer led Sophia inside. She was wearing a chic blazer and designer jeans. Her makeup was flawless. She looked composed, caring, and concerned. Then she saw me. Her smile faltered. Isabel. I thought I was meeting with detectives. I kept my tone even. Sit down, Sophia. She hesitated, looking to the officer, who just nodded at the empty chair before leaving and closing the door. Sophia sat down slowly, her eyes darting around the room, pausing on the two-way mirror. Why are you here? Don't you have your legal team? This isn't about me, I said. This is about you. Sophia managed a tight smile. What that cybersecurity guy said? He just wants a paycheck, Izzy, and I'm here to help you prove that. Her eyes flicked toward the mirror. I don't get it. You will. I opened my briefcase and slid a digital receipt across the table. Sophia, did you purchase a Ghost Keys spyware subscription last month? She just stared. All the color drained from her face. That's a fake. How did you answer the question? Her lips thinned. I was researching for a blog post. It's for an article? I slid another paper over. And these remote access logs? Was that research for your article too? Sophia's hands clenched the table's edge. You've been hacking me? That's illegal. I hired a security firm to audit my husband's devices. Every connection he made is legally documented. Sophia's jaw clenched, but she stayed quiet. I leaned forward. Sophia, did you take the emergency password card from my wallet? Silence. No. Why would I do that? Last month, at Dad's birthday dinner at his place in Pacific Heights. You were there. I was visiting our father. You were there because you knew Richard and I would be. You follow our entire schedule. I slid a photo across the table, a still from the restaurant's security camera showing her near my coat, 15 minutes after we arrived. My wallet was in my purse for 10 minutes while I took a call. When I came back, the card was gone. Sophia glanced at the image. That doesn't prove anything. Where's that password now, Sophia? Her hand moved toward her phone. Don't, I said quietly. I know it's not on you because my security expert watched you text it to my husband, Richard, from a coffee shop in the marina. Sophia's hand stopped. She clutched her phone, her fingers trembling. For the first time, she looked trapped. This is insane. You're trying to frame me, Isabel. You're my sister, am I? I cut in, my voice quiet but sharp, because sisters don't spend months plotting to take away their future niece or nephew. Sophia went completely still. What are you talking about? I reached into the briefcase again. This time I pulled out the decrypted chat logs. 90 days of them, printed, time stamped, and highlighted. I laid them out one by one like cards in a rigged game. Sophia's eyes were wide. What is that? Let me read you a story, Sophia. It's called Phase 1. How I decided my sister's perfect life had to burn. I picked up the first page. Day 1, June 18th, dinner tonight. Richard wouldn't shut up about the baby. Isabel, glowing at 33. Isabel, the tech wunderkind. I'm so sick of her name. I write a lifestyle blog and my parents treat me like a hobbyist. I'm done being the footnote. Sophia's face was pale. I went on. Day 15, July 3rd. I know how to do this. Isabel thinks she's untouchable with her new fortune. She won't see this coming. I need admin access to her network. Then I need to make it look like she's embezzling funds, a scandal so big the board will oust her without a second thought. Sophia shook her head. Stop. Where did you get that? Day 28, July 11th. Isabel goes to Dad's every month. She's so predictable. I'll bump into her next time. Snag the password while she's distracted. I looked up. You did bump into me, Sophia. You hugged me. You said you were so happy for me. Then you stole my password. I didn't. Day 35, July 18th. Done. The password is with Richard. Isabel has no idea. So gullible. My voice cracked on the last word, but I kept going. Day 47, July 30th. Found the perfect angle. Richard will use the password to wire funds to an offshore account. With a baby coming, the feds will move fast. They'll freeze her accounts and her reputation will be ruined before she can hire an accountant. Isabel won't have time to fight it. Sophia was breathing in short, shallow breaths. You can't use this. This is private. Day 75, September 2nd. Test run tonight. Richard bypassed the two-factor authentication from his laptop. He left a Trojan file on her server. She never saw it. It's the perfect backdoor. I put the page down and met her eyes. You practice, Sophia. You and my husband worked together to destroy my life's work. Tears were streaming down her face. But I wasn't done. Day 82, September 9th. Told Richard the final plan. He balked, but I reminded him this was his only way out of the marriage without losing half of his venture capital firm. He agreed to make the anonymous tip himself. Sophia whispered, Isabel, please. Day 89, September 16th. Tomorrow it's go time. Richard will make the transfer while Isabel's at her final ultrasound. He will tip off the SEC. By morning, Isabel will be under federal investigation. She'll lose her company, her reputation, her baby's inheritance. She'll finally know failure. And I'll be there to help Richard. Goodbye, my perfect sister. I placed the last sheet on the table. The room was silent beside Sophia's panicked, ragged breaths. She stared at the pages, her entire scheme laid bare on a metal table. I can explain, she rasped. Can you? I leaned back. Because I'm listening, Sophia. Explain why you and my husband spent 90 days planning to frame me for a federal crime. Explain the spyware. Explain the stolen password. Explain why you targeted a pregnant woman. Because you knew the board of directors would be too risk-averse to wait for the truth. Sophia opened her mouth. A strangled noise came out. In my purse, I knew my phone was recording every word, every lie she had told, and the confession that was about to erupt. Go on, I said calmly. Explain. Before Sophia breaks, comment guilty or innocent. Because in 60 seconds she completely implodes. The chat logs, the financial trail, the jealousy, it all comes out. And what she screams at me next, I wanted your entire life to burn, will be forwarded to my lawyer. Note, this story is for illustrative purposes. This story isn't about real people. But if you want to see how my sister's jealousy torched her own world, keep reading. This is a family's final chapter. Sophia's mouth opened, then snapped shut. I didn't, she faltered, her hands trembling. You're twisting those messages. I was creating a design portfolio for a dramatic client. I studied those scripts. Sophia, my tone was level. The plan. Tell me about the plan. Her expression crumbled. You can't use my texts? That's illegal, Ava. You can't. Legally sourced by a licensed investigator, I corrected. Perfectly admissible. My husband's right to privacy doesn't cover a criminal plot. But they're just words. Her voice became brittle. Just angry thoughts. I never did. I pushed the final piece of evidence over the table. A photograph from the PI. It showed Sophia on a Boston wharf, getting a small vial from a known felon. Liam's prized sports car was parked just feet away. This car is registered to my husband's firm. You had access. This was taken at 8:30 last night. My Lamaze class was from 8 to 9. I wasn't there. I met her gaze. But you were. Sophia stared at the image, her breath short and sharp. She shot to her feet, the chair scraping loudly. You think you're so smart. Her voice was venomous. I stayed seated. Sophia slammed her hands on the gallery table. You always got everything, the glowing reviews, the perfect career, Liam's endless money. So you chose to burn it all down? I asked quietly. Yes. She was shrieking now, tears smearing her mascara. I wanted you to hurt. I wanted you to feel what it's like to lose the single thing you love, to have it all turn to ash. I leaned in, and my baby was just collateral damage? Sophia's laugh was a terrible broken sound. I never cared about the damn baby. This was for you, to make you pay for living the life that was supposed to be mine. The gallery was utterly still. Sophia gasped for air, her chest heaving. My voice was a whisper, so you admit it. You conspired with my husband, you bought illicit substances to plant in my car, you tried to frame me. Sophia's expression went blank. The rage evaporated, leaving only pure dread. Wait, no, I didn't mean that. I took out my phone and double-tapped the screen, connecting the call. My lawyer's voice emerged, calm and detached. I have the recording, Ava. It's all there. Sophia stumbled back from the table. No, please wait. His voice was crisp. Sophia Hayes, we have a complete confession. Expect service within the hour for conspiracy to endanger a minor, defamation, and numerous other charges. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. Ava, please. I'm your family. Liam will be handled separately. I rose, walked to her side, and looked directly at her. You stopped being my family 90 days ago. My lawyer's voice kept speaking from the phone, outlining the immediate actions. A restraining order is effective now. Your accounts will be frozen. Do not try to contact her. Do not try to leave the state. Sophia was weeping. Ava, Ava, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it, I swear. Please. I disconnected the call and left the gallery. The incriminating texts were still on the table. The photo, the bank records, all the proof it took me 3 days to find, 3 days to believe, 3 days to tear down her life as she'd tried to tear down mine. I expected to feel triumphant, powerful, anything. Instead, a hollow ache filled my chest. I still hadn't faced the worst truth. A memory surfaced of her design school rival who was expelled for plagiarism on the flimsiest evidence. I knew then this wasn't Sophia's first demolition. Her last victim was out there, living in the rubble. My lawyer's car pulled up to the curb. He looked drained. You managed that perfectly, he said. The confession was indisputable, voluntarily given. It's rock solid. I only nodded. Detective Russo sat across from me. We've denied her bail. She's a flight risk and a danger. The DA is filing formal charges this afternoon. Attempted murder is on the table. She's facing 20 years minimum. And Liam? I asked, my voice thin. We bring him in again this evening. Your sister-in-law is trying to blame him. We checked her cell data. A message from Sophia pinged a tower near your fender bender a mile away, moments after it happened. She was boasting to a friend, just as you suspected. I closed my eyes for a moment. You and your baby are very lucky, Russo said. Sophia is stable but remains hospitalized. Her son has a slight concussion. Both will be ready to give statements. He paused. You stopped her, Ava. If she'd succeeded this time, she would not have stopped. People like her never do. I met his eyes. She won't stop now either, not even from a prison cell. Russo's jaw tightened. Then we'll ensure she stays there. He stood, then paused. Another thing, While running Sophia's background, we found a flag, a case from 2 years back involving an analyst named Isabella Rossi. She was accused of embezzling $100,000 from her investment firm. She lost her license, her reputation, her entire future. She's been working in a cafe to make ends meet. A sick feeling coiled in my gut. What does Sophia have to do with her? Isabella worked at the same Boston firm. The evidence was all digital and completely fabricated. The one who supposedly discovered the fraud was Sophia. The world tilted slightly. Sophia framed her. It's our working theory. Isabella has maintained her innocence, but the case was airtight. Russo put a card on the table. Isabella Rossi lives in the North End, works at a cafe on Hanover Street. You need to talk to her. He left. I stared at the card, a life destroyed by my sister-in-law 2 years ago, and I had no idea. Sophia had rehearsed her cruelty on someone else. Someone who lost everything. Someone still trapped in the ruins Sophia built. I snatched the card, my path now clear. By noon, Sophia was in a holding cell. By 1, Liam and his father were at the precinct. By 2, I was at home, staring at the clue that started it all. Russo had called me 20 minutes earlier. Your in-laws moved fast. Benjamin Croft is representing all 3 of them. He's already filing a motion to suppress Sophia's confession, claiming you coerced it. There was no coercion, I said. She confessed willingly. I know the tape proves that, but Croft will attack it. It's his move. Russo had waited a bit. And there's more. That flag on Sophia's record, the Isabella Rossi case. I told you about her. I remember. Dig into it, Ava. If Sophia has done this before, it builds a clear pattern. It shows this wasn't a one-time crisis. It proves she is a predator. I ended the call and opened my laptop. Russo's words echoed. Narcissists don't just escalate to attempted murder. They work their way up. I connected the old hard drive from our basement storage and searched past the recent files, past 2025 into 2024. And I found it, a folder dated May 2024. I opened it. Files loaded one by one, images, invoices, and a document named IAR project. My stomach dropped. Dear God, not again. I clicked the file. It contained 20 entries spanning May to July of 2024. I started to read. Day 1, May 18th. Isabella Rossi thinks she is God's gift. The whole firm worships her. Isabella's portfolio is amazing. Isabella landed 3 whale clients. I'm sick of being her footnote. She needs to disappear. I scrolled further. Day 15, June 1st. I see a way to get rid of Isabella. She manages client trust accounts. If money vanishes from her terminal, the blame is direct. Day 25, June 20th. I have Isabella's network password. She left her workstation unlocked during a fire drill. So careless. Day 30, July 15th. It's happening today. I'm moving $100,000 from the client fund to a shell account using Isabella's login. By morning, she'll be fired, likely charged, and I'll finally be the star. A wave of nausea hit me. Sophia had done this before, framing an innocent person and ruining them, 2 years before targeting me. I opened the browser and searched Isabella Rossi Boston fraud. The top result was a Boston Globe article from July 17th, 2024. Star analyst Isabella Rossi accused in $100,000 theft. I followed the link. The report was concise and cold. Boston firm Northgate Capital has filed a complaint against former analyst Isabella Rossi for embezzling $100,000. Authorities report a clear digital trail. Login records, transaction data, and emails all point to Rossi. Rossi denies the charges, claiming she was framed. I'm innocent, Rossi said outside the courthouse. Someone targeted me. Prosecutors believe the case will proceed this fall. I kept scrolling. A file from late 2022 caught my eye. Hayes settlement. The documents detailed an agreement where Sophie Hayes repaid $75,000 to Apex Designs. A note in Chloe's journal file from that time was more chilling. She paid to make it go away. Reputation is ash. She's finished in Seattle. I found Sophie Hayes on a professional networking site. The profile picture showed a vibrant, smiling woman from years ago. Her bio was heartbreaking, seeking new opportunities in project coordination. Her last role was at Apex Designs, ending August 2022. 2 years of nothing. Her posts were infrequent and raw. Looking for freelance drafting work, portfolio available. Does anyone know of openings for an admin assistant willing to learn? Her last post was a year ago. A public records search gave me her address. A small place in Georgetown. The rent was just over $1,000 a month. It was the kind of place you end up when your life has been torched. I stared at the screen. Chloe had systematically dismantled this woman's existence, just as she'd planned for me. And Sophie had been living in the wreckage for 2 years, never knowing who lit the match. I picked up my phone and called Miller. I found something, I said. Chloe has done this before. A woman named Sophie Hayes, 2 years ago, same script. Accused of theft, fabricated digital trail, career destroyed. Get it all to me, Miller said. If we show a pattern, our case is airtight. It proves premeditation and establishes her as a serial offender. I'm going to see Sophie, I told him. She deserves to know the truth. Amelia, be smart. If Chloe set her up, Sophie might be looking for justice, I finished. So am I. I hung up, grabbed my keys, and drove towards Georgetown. The building was worn, a stark contrast to the polished architect in Sophie's old photos. I knocked on the door of apartment 3C. At 7 p.m., I heard a shuffle. The door opened, secured by a chain. A woman's face, thin and exhausted with deep shadows under her eyes, appeared. She seemed a decade older than her profile picture. Can I help you? Sophie Hayes? She eyed me warily. Who's asking? I took a breath. My name is Amelia. 2 years ago, your colleague Chloe destroyed your life. 3 days ago, she tried to do the exact same thing to me. I think we need to talk. The chain slid back. The studio was tiny, maybe 400 square feet, but spotless. It was a room built for survival. A futon doubled as a couch and bed. A small hot plate sat on a counter next to a mini fridge. No television, just a laptop on a rickety desk. Sophie pointed to the futon. Have a seat. I can't offer you anything. Her voice trailed off. She didn't need to finish. She had nothing to spare. I sat. Sophie stood, arms crossed over her chest. You said your colleague destroyed your life. Chloe Sterling, I remember her. We were at Apex Designs together 2 years ago. I know, I replied, and I have something you have to see. I opened my laptop, found the Seattle project folder, and turned the screen toward her. These are Chloe's private files from that time. She documented everything. Sophie's hands trembled as she scrolled. Her face went white. Week 1, she read out loud. She wrote about me. Sophie Hayes thinks she's the next star. She kept reading. Week 3, I know how to clip her wings. Week 5, acquired Sophie's network credentials. Her voice cracked. Week 6, I'll move the 75,000 using her login. Oh God, she whispered. She planned it all. She wrote it all down. Just like she planned what she was going to do to me, I said softly. Sophie collapsed onto the futon beside me, her gaze locked on the screen. I told them all I was set up. My boss, the police, my family, no one would listen. She looked at me, tears finally streaming down her cheeks. How could they doubt it? The evidence was airtight. Marcus's records, wire transfers, my login, my laptop. I believe you, I whispered. Sophie's composure broke. She scrubbed at her eyes with a clenched fist. Explain it to me, I urged. Everything. Sophie inhaled shakily. 2 years ago, I was a junior architect at Apex Designs Seattle. I was excelling. I had just secured 3 major high-rise contracts. My director was grooming me for a senior position. She trailed off. Chloe started 6 months after I did. Initially, she was all smiles and support, but a nasty competitive streak emerged. Any project I secured, she tried to undermine. Every blueprint I proposed, she found fault with. She turned my career into a battle I never wanted to fight. Sophie's jaw clenched. Then, in August of 2022, a $75,000 client deposit vanished. The server logs pointed to my credentials. The funds were wired to an untraceable crypto wallet. I was fired that afternoon. The firm pressed charges. I liquidated my savings to hire an attorney. And in court, I prompted. The digital trail was damning, Sophie said. My lawyer negotiated a deal to avoid a criminal record if I paid restitution and signed an NDA, but my career was over. The entire Seattle architecture community blacklisted me. Any background check showed the fraud investigation. I sent out 200 resumes, landed 2 interviews, and got 0 offers. She gestured at her small apartment. I've been delivering for Amazon and Lyft for 2 years just to live here. My parents cut me off, ashamed of the family name. Her voice became a whisper. I lost it all. My future, my savings, my family, all because of Chloe. I saw her then, a reflection of my own past 3 days, accused, arrested, and utterly alone. But Sophie had no weapon to defend herself. She'd been trapped in the ruins for 2 years while Chloe moved on to her next target. Me. Sophie, I said, I can prove Chloe did it. I have her own words, her plans, on a hidden drive. And after what she did to me, trying to frame me for attempted murder, we can get your case looked at again. Sophie's eyes shot wide. Reopen it now? It's a pattern, I insisted. Chloe destroyed you 2 years ago. She tried to destroy me last week. It's her signature move. Gain access, create a disaster, and pin it on her rival. If we present this pattern to the DA, they'll see she's a predator, not some one-off criminal. Sophie just stared. If we prove this, could I get my life back? I don't know, I answered honestly. But we have to try. Sophie was quiet for a long moment. Then she leaned forward, her face buried in her hands. When she looked up, her expression had shifted. The weariness was there, but beneath it was a flicker of steel. Determination. Tell me what I need to do. Be at the police station tomorrow morning, I said. Make a formal statement. Tell them exactly what happened in 2022. I'll provide the cloud drive data as corroborating evidence. Detective Miller, who's leading my case, will take your testimony and compare it to Chloe's confession. Do you think they'll listen this time? Sophie asked, her voice a fragile mix of hope and fear. They'll listen, I assured her, because this time Chloe has already admitted to framing someone. You're not just some desperate person claiming a setup. You're victim number 2 in a clear pattern. Sophie nodded slowly. Okay, I'm in. There's one more thing, I added. If we do this, Chloe's high-priced lawyers will attack you. They'll claim you're a bitter opportunist seeking revenge. They will tear your life apart all over again. Sophie's expression hardened. Let them try. I've had nothing for 2 years. This time, I'm not going down without a fight. I got to my feet and held out my hand. We do this together. Sophie rose and shook it, her grip surprisingly strong. Together. On the way back to my car, my phone buzzed. It was Detective Miller. Amelia, we have a problem. Marcus's parents posted Chloe's bail. $500,000. She's been released. My blood ran cold. Just 20 minutes ago, her lawyer swore she was no flight risk with deep community ties. I remembered Chloe's words from the drive. Day 90. Even if Amelia suspects, she can't prove a thing. But Chloe didn't know I had her files. She didn't know about Sophie, and she had no idea what was coming next. Miller, I said, I need you to get Sophie Hayes in for a statement tomorrow morning, and I need a meeting with the DA. We aren't just charging Chloe with 1 crime anymore. We're charging her with 2. We're going to establish her as a serial predator. The following 3 days were a whirlwind of official statements, evidence reviews, and meetings as the DA's office pieced together a case to bury Chloe. Friday morning, September 20th. Sophie and I sat with Detective Miller and DA Eleanor Vance in a conference room at the King County Prosecutor's Office. Vance was 58, with silver hair in a tight knot and intense gray eyes that missed everything. She'd prosecuted Seattle's worst criminals for 20 years. Miller said she was relentless. Perfect. We needed relentless. Sophie recounted her story meticulously. The professional jealousy, the stolen credentials, the $75,000 siphoned from the project budget, and the digital fingerprints Chloe planted across her entire work life. Her voice was calm, but I saw her hands shaking in her lap as she described being fired, the police arriving at her door, and her parents telling her she was a disgrace. Vance listened without a single interruption. She took no notes. Her expression gave nothing away. Clara recounted the story with a clinical calm, explaining the discovery to her lawyer. After she finished, Davies leaned forward, the old leather of his chair sighing. Why did you wait to bring this to me? Her voice was a bare whisper, her hands clenched tight. I needed undeniable proof. He would have twisted it. The evidence was irrefutable. I set the tablet on his mahogany desk. This is my proof. Davies powered it on, his face impassive as he scrolled through the saved conversations. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly as he read Marcus's detailed plans, his affair with Isabella laid bare. When he looked up, his expression was grim. This is premeditated malicious intent. Mrs. Thorne, we are taking immediate legal action. Clara let out a sob, the dam of her composure breaking. Thank you. Davies just nodded, closing the tablet's cover. I will need this device and any other proof you have managed to secure. By Friday, October 11th, our lawyer's office was a command center. A whiteboard showed two schemes in black and green. 2023, Liam Peterson. April, business rivalry. May, confidential data leaked. June, $100,000 corporate sabotage. Peterson framed. 2025, Clara Thorne. October, marital jealousy. November, charity funds diverted. December, planned custody battle. Clara framed. Davies stood before it, his hands clasped behind his back. He uses the same template. It's his signature move. Grant, the PI, nodded. We can argue a pattern of racketeering. It adds significant prison time. I want everything, Davies said. Every account, every message, every person he and she contacted. I connected my laptop to the monitor, displaying the evidence I'd copied. The complete chat logs from both years, bank records, offshore account creations, payments to a hacker for the data leak, and the wire transfers from the Peterson case. Digital footprints from browsers, recovered messages, and IP logs. Our witness list included Clara Thorne, Liam Peterson, once he agreed to testify, his former secretary, and the original investigator. The delivery driver who saw Isabella meeting the hacker, Davies's paralegal, a young woman named Ava, took meticulous notes. She was in her late 20s, dressed sharply, with an eagle eye for detail. She didn't speak, but I saw her piecing together the timeline that Davies would present in court. When I finished, Davies looked at Grant. How solid is the recording from the house? Rock solid, Grant confirmed. He admitted everything. Marcus confessed on our hidden camera. He said he wanted Clara gone and didn't care how it was done. Those were his words. A rare cold smile touched Davies' lips. Perfect. We'll make him regret them. On Saturday, October 12th, Davies called us into his firm. Clara and I sat across from him while Grant stood near the window. A heavy binder lay on the desk. He opened it. These are the charges we are filing against Marcus Thorne and Isabella Vance. He started reading the list. For the 2025 plot, conspiracy to commit fraud, defamation, forgery, perjury, and illegal surveillance. He flipped a page. For the 2023 incident, corporate espionage of $100,000, wire fraud, identity theft, and violations of the Economic Espionage Act. Another page, and RICO charges for a continued criminal enterprise, plus a designation as a serial white-collar offender due to the multiple planned schemes. Davies met our eyes. If convicted on all counts, they will each face a minimum of 20 to 25 years. They won't see parole for at least 12. The room felt airless, 20 to 25 years. Marcus would be in his 60s when he got out. After she left, the tension in Davy's office was thick. Marcus fidgeted nervously. What about my parents? I asked, my voice cold. Davies's expression softened slightly. Andrew and Catherine are also being indicted for conspiracy and for aiding the cover up with that false alibi. With full cooperation, they could get house arrest. Without it, he let the sentence hang. They're looking at 1 to 3 years each. I nodded slowly. They made their choice. Davies closed the binder. The preliminary hearing is Tuesday at 10 a.m. They will almost certainly plead not guilty. Then we prepare for trial. I will need both of you to testify. Marcus and I looked at each other. He nodded. We'll be there. Leaving the law office, the Chicago air felt biting. Even for October, the wind off the lake was sharp, carrying the scent of rain and exhaust. Marcus and I walked in silence to the parking garage. We didn't exchange a word until we reached my car. He finally spoke. Eleanor. His voice was thick with emotion. Thank you for believing me, for fighting for me. I looked at him, the man whose life my own husband tried to destroy. A new resolve hardened within me. This was more than just saving myself now. It was about making sure Richard never hurt anyone again. It's not done, I told him. After his plea, the real battle starts. Marcus nodded. I'm ready. But I hid my own fear, the chilling fact that Richard was out on bail. He knew I was the one who found the evidence. He knew about the tablet, about Marcus, about the entire case Davies was building, and he was trapped. A trapped predator is the most dangerous kind. I recalled a line from his notes. Day 60. Even if Eleanor finds out, it's her word against mine. But now I had his words. And Richard knew it, which meant he would either run or retaliate. I wasn't sure what would be worse. Tuesday, October 15th, Cook County Courthouse. I sat in the gallery and watched my husband deny 12 felony charges. The courtroom was packed, reporters lining the back wall. Liam Peterson's family was there with the prosecutors. My parents sat directly behind Richard, their lawyer between them. I was alone. Richard wore a tailored gray suit, his appearance immaculate, a far cry from a jail jumpsuit. He was still free. The judge, a stern man in his late 50s, named Judge Albright, looked down. Richard Thorne, you are charged on 12 counts, including conspiracy to commit fraud, corporate espionage, grand larceny, perjury, multiple counts of wire fraud, and engaging in a criminal enterprise under the RICO statute. The indictment reading seemed to last an eternity. Each charge landed like a physical blow. How do you plead? Richard's voice was clear and firm. Not guilty, Your Honor. Ice coursed through my veins. He was going to fight it all. Davies stood. Your Honor, the state requests the defendant be remanded. He poses a significant risk to the primary witness, his wife, Eleanor Thorne. Morgan, his lawyer, was on his feet. Your Honor, my client has surrendered his passport. He is no flight risk and has deep roots in Chicago. Judge Albright fixed his gaze on Richard. Bail is continued. But Mr. Thorne, you will have absolutely no contact with Eleanor Thorne or Marcus Vance. Any breach results in your immediate remand. Understood? Yes, Your Honor. The trial is set for January 6th, 2026. Court is adjourned. The gavel struck. I stood, moving with the crowd. In the corridor I saw them. Richard, his parents, and Morgan already planning their strategy. His father, Andrew, approached me. Eleanor, we need to talk about this as a family. I kept walking. There is nothing to discuss. His mother's voice shook. Please, darling. Richard made a mistake, but he is your husband. I stopped and faced them. He tried to have me declared mentally unfit to take my child. That's not a mistake. That's monstrous. Isabella blocked my way, her face a mask of contempt. You did this, Clara. You ruined our lives. My voice was barely audible. Richard ruined them 60 days ago. A bailiff appeared at my side. Ma'am, please step aside. She glared at me before her parents pulled her away toward the exit. I watched them disappear, knowing that moment in the cold marble hallway was the final break. The following weeks were a whirlwind of pre-trial motions. Week 1 was spent in Davy's office, preparing me for the deposition. Answer only the question asked. No emotion. They will paint you as a scorned wife. Maintain your composure. We reviewed the evidence for days, the screenshots of the messages, the annotated plans from the tablet, the web of shell companies and crypto accounts, every piece of the case. Week 2. Liam Peterson officially joined the prosecution's case. 2 years after his conviction was overturned, he was ready to face them in court. Davies arranged a meeting. Liam looked tired, but his resolve was firm. Thank you, he said, for finding the truth, for giving me a chance to clear my name. I just said I was so sorry for what Richard did. It's not your fault. He offered a small smile. You stopped him. That's what matters. His family was still recovering from the financial and emotional fallout. Davies filed a motion to introduce evidence from the first case. I watched the proceedings on a monitor, listening to Liam describe the planted data, his life unraveling. I couldn't bear to watch the whole thing. Week 3, Morgan fought to have the tablet's contents suppressed. He claimed it was a violation of marital privacy. Judge Albright overruled him. It was a shared family device. There was no expectation of privacy. Motion denied. He then claimed the digital chain of custody was broken. Also denied. The metadata was intact. Access was legitimate. Motion denied. Marcus's deposition was next. I sat in an adjacent room as he detailed 2 years of a nightmare. She was a bulldog. For 2 hours, his legal team tried to break me, but I didn't bend. My lawyer prepped me last night. Your deposition is 4 hours. They'll say you're unstable. He'll say you invented the inscription out of spite, that you manipulated the entire story. Be still. I will. He'll call you finding it a violation of privacy. We know that, but his goal is to sow doubt. You must be immovable. I nodded. Donovan leaned forward. Elena, I've handled high conflict divorces for 20 years. I've never seen arrogance like this. Most men hide their tracks. Marcus designed a monument to his betrayal that gives us our leverage. His own work will be his undoing. What if they argue the plaque was just a concept piece? Then we use the saved voicemail from Isabella. Her bragging, I'm getting the life I was always meant to have. You can't fabricate that level of entitled cruelty. Her father can't defend that. He stood. Go home, get some rest. Monday, October 3rd, at 9 a.m., we begin to dismantle his world. Sleep felt impossible that night. Staring at the bay, I remembered Isabella's face in the lawyer's office, not of shame, but of absolute triumph. She genuinely believed she had already won. Her father's plan was simple: discredit me, make me the unstable, bitter wife who would fabricate anything to win. Plant that seed of doubt. But he had no defense for Isabella's own voice on that message. I had listened to it over and over, building a wall of ice around my heart. Each time Isabella gloated, I'm getting the life I was meant to have. A piece of me hardened. Tomorrow a judge would hear it. They would see the architectural plans. They would hear about the secret project. They would hear my testimony detailing how I found the plaque inside the model. And they would decide if my husband would be forced to sign over half of his firm or if he would get away clean. October 3rd, 2022. The Thorne divorce proceedings started on a cold San Francisco morning. It was a 5-day ordeal that felt like 5 years. The gallery was packed, the city hungry for a glimpse into the collapse of an empire. I stood in our San Francisco penthouse, 8 months pregnant, with my cousin Isabella beside me. From the 48th floor, the city lights felt like a galaxy beneath us. My husband Marcus, the star architect worth millions, had given me all this. Isabella had always seemed impressed. He adores you, Elena, she'd often say. This view, the baby, you have everything. I heard only familial affection, blind to the sharp blade of her envy. I thought she was my greatest supporter, my closest confidant. The next day, I was in Marcus's home studio, looking for a book on nurseries. My eyes landed on a new architectural model, one he'd been working on obsessively. A client project in Napa, he'd said. Something felt off. I leaned closer. Tucked inside the miniature living room was a tiny engraved plaque. My heart seized. It read, "For Isabella, our forever." In the model's garden were her favorite roses, not mine. The details were all for her. My world fractured as I looked at the intricate design. It wasn't a client's house, it was their future. I felt our baby kick, a tiny, innocent life in the middle of this catastrophic betrayal. The entire project was a monument to their affair. When Marcus came home that night, buzzing with creative energy, I was waiting for him. The little brass plaque was in the center of the vast dining table. His excited smile collapsed, replaced by the pale, panicked look of a man exposed. He sputtered denials, calling it a concept, a design exercise born from stress, but the details didn't lie. His excuses were hollow and insulting. I told him to leave his key and get out. His perfectly designed life crumbled. He was gone, and the silence of the massive apartment was crushing. The life he had curated for me was nothing but a beautiful lie. I watched the fog roll in over the bay, my own future just as obscure. I met Isabella for coffee the next morning. She arrived not with apology in her eyes, but with a chilling proprietary calm. She ordered her usual tea, her hands perfectly still. It was like seeing a stranger. "He was never going to be satisfied with you," she said, her voice like ice. "He wants a partner, not a prop. He loves me." Then came the final brutal twist of the knife. "And I'm pregnant too." The words were a declaration of victory. The betrayal was absolute, a wound so complete it stole my breath. I walked out, leaving my coffee untouched. The world I had known was a wasteland, scorched by the two people I had loved without question. I hired the city's most ruthless divorce attorney that same day. It was going to be a war, Marcus's fortune against my truth. My family called, begging me to reconcile, to think of the family's reputation. I stopped taking their calls. The divorce was a brutal campaign. His lawyers portrayed me as emotionally unstable. My lawyer presented the model, the plaque, and the voicemail. It was a high-stakes battle of architecture and adultery, fought in sterile conference rooms. The months dragged on. As my belly grew, so did my resolve. Marcus and Isabella became tabloid fodder. I ignored it all, focusing only on my health and the small life I would now raise on my own. My son Noah was born on a clear autumn day. Holding him, all the drama seemed to fade. The divorce was settled the following week. I kept the penthouse, got full custody, and a settlement that secured my son's future completely. The terms were crushing for Marcus. His firm's reputation was damaged by the scandal of sleeping with his wife's young cousin. He was now financially bound to 2 women, 2 children, and the wreckage he'd created. The last time I saw him was across the polished table of my lawyer's office. He seemed diminished, the creative spark in his eyes replaced by exhaustion. He had Isabella, but he had lost his entire world. Isabella sent a single spiteful text message. "You couldn't keep him." I deleted it instantly. I hadn't lost a thing. I had been liberated. The door to that chapter of my life was finally sealed shut. A year later, the penthouse was alive with happy voices. We were celebrating Noah's first birthday. My real family, the friends who had stood by me, were all there. The space was no longer a symbol of Marcus's ego, but a home filled with warmth. My friend Chloe put her arm around me. "You're not the same person, Elena. You're forged from fire." I smiled because I knew it was true. The inferno had burned away my naivete, leaving behind something strong. I had launched my own interior design firm, collaborating with other architects. It was already a success. I wasn't Marcus Thorne's wife anymore. I was Elena Thorne, a mother, an entrepreneur, the sole architect of my life. I heard things, of course. Marcus and Isabella had a daughter. They were living in a new house he'd designed, but their life was mortgaged against their treachery, and that kind of debt collects interest forever. I looked at Noah, giggling as he smeared cake on his face, and felt a profound sense of peace. My son would be raised knowing loyalty and honesty. My victory wasn't revenge. It was this quiet, happy life. Judge Atherton looked at Marcus. Please rise. Marcus stood, his expensive suit looking ill fitting. The judge's voice was firm. I have reviewed the evidence. This was not a simple affair, it was a calculated, cruel deception. She adjusted her glasses. You methodically planned the future with one woman while your pregnant wife believed you were building a life with her. The courtroom was silent. You have shown no true accountability, only regret at being caught. Given the emotional and financial damages, I am applying penalties. For the breach of marital fiduciary duty, you will sign over 60% of your firm's value. Your entire personal investment portfolio is awarded to your wife. A quiet gasp went through the room. Marcus swayed on his feet. The judge's gavel cracked once. The court's decision is final. Deputies weren't needed, but his dream was taken into custody. I felt a quiet, calm release. It was over. I looked out from my new design studio. Founder and principal designer, a $500,000 income. Last year's profits seeded a $30,000 grant for women starting over. A new beginning for them, a clean ledger for me. First came the multi-million-dollar settlement from Marcus's firm, a silent admission of his profound betrayal. His cousin Isabella sent a short text. I destroyed everything. For you, for me. I'm sorry, I erased it. The ultrasound photo stayed on my desk. My new lead designer, a woman named Chloe, had an office down the hall. The divorce papers were signed the day Isabella left town. She took a $20,000 severance, loaded her car, and moved back to Ohio, cutting off her embarrassed family. I heard she was working in retail, her architectural ambitions gone. I never saw that coldness in her. My aunt had wept. She chose her path, I told her. My son Noah and I were thriving. I had started my own firm, and Noah was happy in his preschool. The nightmares were gone. He had my artistic eye and a smile that was all his own. Marcus Thorne called me once, months ago. You were right, he'd said from the beginning. I'm just happy my son is safe. He is because of me. Marcus and my uncle had a vicious falling out. My uncle repaid every dollar Marcus had ever loaned him, nearly $100,000. The San Francisco penthouse sold for $12 million. I received more than half, plus another million in damages. He moved into a small sterile condo near the airport. I saw him once a month. The handoffs for Noah were swift, tense, and quiet. We never spoke of Isabella. Isabella was a ghost in Ohio, a place thousands of miles away. She sent a single email last week. 2 words, forgive me. I didn't reply. There was no hate left, just numbness that felt like a cage. Today I met Maria on Ocean Drive. The July heat was thick. She smiled. We got the design contract. You earned it, I told her. She touched my arm. Thank you for the referral, for trusting me. We support our own, I said, and we toasted. Her phone chimed. A client meeting in 10. Go, I insisted. I've got it. She waved from the door. Next week? Absolutely. I watched the boats on the bay. Last spring, I learned my husband was cheating. My own cousin tried to take everything. But she misjudged me. I'm Chloe Renault. As an architect, I build foundations. My marriage was the one I had to demolish. My phone lit up. A message from my mom. A new ultrasound scan. I smiled, left cash, and walked into the humid air. Whole. Free from a broken marriage and from a cousin whose envy nearly ruined me. For once, I felt centered. If you're listening, remember what happened to me. I missed 3 clear warnings. The second phone he tried to hide. The expensive studio equipment he bought her. Their hushed late-night calls. My gut screamed at me. Some secrets have to come out. I don't regret divorcing Julian, only that I didn't listen to myself earlier. The constant jealousy, the backhanded compliments, the way she diminished my success. This kind of envy is a quiet venom. It builds until you find a hidden phone with recordings that shatter your life. All because your own cousin coveted what you had. Don't be so trusting. Don't wait to find a secret phone with their voices on it to learn betrayal comes from within. It's brutal. My advice is this: trust your instincts. If a relative makes you feel small or anxious, pull away. That toxicity is contagious and will spread. They know your finances, your pregnancy fears, your private weaknesses, and they will weaponize it all to destroy you. I was fortunate to escape. This taught me that growing up together means nothing if the heart is not shared. If this resonated with you, please comment. Have you been betrayed by someone you thought you could always count on? Share this with anyone who needs this message. Subscribe for my next story, which is about a mother who turns on her own daughter. I appreciate you hearing me out. I get it if this story isn't for you. I hope you find something that brings you comfort. Be safe out there.